What is up, guys? Welcome back to episode 8 of the Skeptics Podcast. Today, we got another guest, so it's going to be way more interesting than me and John just sitting here twiddling our thumbs. And have you ever seen Young Guns before? Have you ever seen Young Guns, the movie?
No, I don't think so.
There's a scene in it to where it's about Billy the Kid, and Billy the Kid's just now got into the gang with everybody else, but they're all making fun of him because he's so out there, and he would be going out there and dancing with all these different girls and everything like that at their parties or whatever. And
I don't like where this is going.
there's a part where they're all sitting there making fun of him or whatever, and they're all just lean back. They're just kind of just looking like young dudes doing all this stuff or whatever. And this other guy walks up there and he looks at them all, and he looks at Billy the Kid and he goes, "At least he's out there having fun, and we're just pulling on our tallywhackers." And they're all like, "All right." They all get up and walk off. So anyway, welcome back to the podcast. My name is Dylan Turley. My name is Dylan Turley, your other co-star,
John Reeves.
and today we have a guest. Uh, he is a good friend of mine. We've got to develop a relationship over a good amount of months now. I don't think it's been a year, has it?
It's been pretty close to a year.
Pretty close to a year. Uh, like I said, I'll just introduce him as my friend. His name is David Dinkins, and he'll give you a little story about himself as well. Uh, I've come really fond of him because he is a very loyal guy. He is a great husband, from what I hear, a great father, and he's got some insight that I think the world just needs to see. Um, so we're going to dive into that. But real quick, David, if you wanted to tell everybody kind of who you are and just you could say some fun facts about you, whatever you want to do.
Fun facts, huh? I'm a deacon at Lake Street Baptist Church. Uh, Faithful Christian. Like to consider myself a good husband and a good father. Got a wife. We've been married 16 years. I've got a son that's 15 and a daughter that's 13. And I've been working in metalworking industry, which is how I ended up working with Dylan for about 16 years now. Actually, just took a new job, stepping away from metalworking. I'm going to go work with giant miscanthus grass and turn it into animal bedding. So that'll be a good time.
Right.
Something completely different. Stepping away from 16 years of experience doing what I know to something I know what I've read on Google about.
Right. Was and then I could have definitely be getting this mixed up. Was it me and you that was talking about at one time? There was a study done that would say like every 20 years it was like good for I don't know if you want to say self-esteem or confidence or anything, but they would say that it's good like every 20 years to get into a different profession. Just because you get so used into being in one, and say you like machining like you were talking about, even if you're really proficient in that, I'm not to say that you could learn everything possibly to learn, but everything gets boring to a certain point.
No
So,
kidding.
yeah, yeah. So I always heard that it was good to now. I'm not saying everybody go out there and just leave their job. That's not what I'm saying at all. But
Dylan says go job hopping.
go job hopping, dude. I got a good friend of mine. Shout out to Ben. He's job hopped for more than anybody I know. But you talk about one of the biggest, hardest workers. One day he'd say he was climbing telephone poles. Next day he'd be doing oil well stuff. Next way after that he'd be working on turbines. Just a crazy amount of stuff. But I always heard that that was a very interesting thing on that, and it seems that you're pretty excited for it.
I am. I'm excited for the change. It's going to be a new change of pace for me. And I don't know if it was us having that conversation, but I've always kind of been the type that thought you should be loyal to the company you worked for. I got kind of an old soul, an old school mentality. But I learned after I left my first job, there was so much that I learned so quickly in my second job that it felt like a good decision to do that. Now, I missed a lot of the guys I worked with because I worked at that place for 12 years. Made a lot of good relationships and a lot of good friendships that are, still standing today. We still talk quite a bit. Uh, So I definitely don't recommend job hopping, but I do think it benefits you monetarily and to kind of keep your interest going. If you do decide to swap jobs, maybe every 7 or 8 years or so, especially if you feel like you've gotten to a point that your job's monotonous and you really aren't going to grow or learn anymore. It doesn't hurt. I mean, you may make a mistake, but what's the worst that can happen if you make a mistake? You turn around and go back to where you were. Hopefully, no harm, no foul.
Do you have any hobbies?
I go fishing. Uh, do a lot of work with the church. That takes up quite a bit of time. So, work and family time and church take up most of my time. I go fishing. I go hunting some with my son during the deer season. And really, I mean, that's about it. That takes up most of my time.
Well, I know that we were talking about kind of like you growing up and everything over lunch today. One thing I don't think we did ask though was where did the faith and God kind of come into it? Like, was it like since you were really little, did you go to church, or was it something like where you went to church for a little while, maybe kind of fell off for a little bit, came back, or whatever?
So I went to church, even as a young child. I was saved and baptized when I was 5 years old and was heavy into church through probably about the time until my mom and dad split up. Had a really good youth pastor at the time. I spent a lot of time with him. He helped me through a lot of those struggles. I told you through lunch some of the things that, just had to be done because of our situation at home. So he helped me deal with a lot of that as best I could. And then he moved on to another place. I started kind of falling away. And then, with school and everything, once I got out of high school, uh, friends started drinking a lot. I ran in with them. I told you I lost my scholarship to college because of it. And then I met my wife. And after we had our son, we finally sat down because I was still drinking pretty heavy at the time. Didn't really have a plan anymore because once I lost my scholarship, my life plans kind of fell apart and I didn't know what I was going to do. And, we sat down and had a pretty intense talk about, the decisions that I was going to have to make if I wanted to be a husband and a father or if I wanted to be drunk and be alone. Luckily, I made the right decision
Right.
and I'm a happy husband and a happy father. Uh, could have easily went another direction. Uh, so after that, we decided that we needed to get back into church because we were both raised in church, and you know, typical high school stuff, and you let yourself kind of drift away. And once I came back and I rededicated my life, it's been at the forefront of what I've been doing since that time. That's been 15, 16 years ago.
Was it? I'm always interested in this question when people get married, especially when both of them go to church. Was that something that you were looking for, or did it just end up falling together? Like, so when me and my wife got together, I was still going to church and everything, and I was still big into faith, but I just never, on the first date at least, I didn't think about asking her anything like that. I just kind
Uh,
of was getting to know her, and then it ended up falling to where we both were. Now I think it's more than likely here just because the little southern state that we are. I think a bunch of people go to church
yeah,
or believe in God at least. So was that something that you were like? I'm not saying that you were seeking, but it just got lucky.
I got lucky.
That's awesome.
My entire life has been a mixture of lucky or blessed, whatever you want to call it. I've just been in the right spot at the right time numerous times and had multiple doors open to me. And I've just been lucky, extremely lucky in my life. So, it's just not something that I was seeking, especially at that time whenever we met. That was something I was trying to run away from, not seek for. So it just, God was looking out for me and it all worked out for me in the end.
Right on. What's the if you got a question, butt in here because shout out, my grandpa told me I talk too much.
And then you've been talking the whole time.
I've been talking the whole time, so if you got any questions, John, please butt in here. Uh,
I want to see you just snatch the
you
microphone.
snatch and start getting in a fight right here on the spot. Uh,
We can edit that out.
no, we're keeping that in. We're all about coming to the truth at the end of all the conversations. So, me and my wife have been married since October.
Mhm.
Is there any advice that you would give me into try to keeping a relationship healthy?
Yes. Don't go to bed mad.
Okay.
Doesn't help anybody. And all you do whenever you go to sleep is you sleep bad and you're cranky the next day, and it makes the argument that much worse. Learn that from experience. So I don't care if you have to be up at 5 o'clock in the morning and you don't go to sleep till 4 o'clock in the morning. Figure it out before you go to bed. It's not worth sleeping on. My wife hates that sometimes because she wants to go to sleep because she's a sleeper and I'm really not.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Yeah. But if there's something going on that we're talking about, and we may get mad at each other and not talk for 30 or 45 minutes until the temper and the mood has calmed down some, but we don't go to bed mad. And that's served us well through the years. Communicate. That's another big thing is communicate about everything going on. If you lose that communication, then breakdowns happen very quickly. You know, me and my wife have bypassed, I think, a lot of hurdles and struggles through the years because we're very open with each other. Like the way that she puts it is, if I'm being a butthole, she'll stop and say, "You're being a butthole. You need to stop." And if she's being ridiculous, I will say, "You're being ridiculous. You need to stop." Now, in the moment, does that make us mad? Sometimes. But having that ability to have that open communication with each other, she comes up to me and says, "That's enough. That's too much." I'll step back and I'll say, "She doesn't stop me like that very often. That's not the kind of relationship that we have. So if she's taking that step and saying, that's too much, you need to cut it out, I probably need to step back and think about what position I'm taking here and what I'm doing." And so just having that mutual respect to have that open conversation and open dialogue with each other. Now, that doesn't mean that if my wife sits down next to me and I've had a really long day and she starts talking to me about events that are going to happen 6 months from now, like a puppy dog's birthday that everybody's going to and what kind of cupcake she wants to have,
Oh yeah.
that I'm not going to say, no, no, no. Today is not the day. That's not the type of communication I'm talking about. There's times for that, and there's times for, sometimes David needs a little quiet time.
Yeah, yeah.
But being able to have the hard conversations. Don't ever shy away from the hard conversation. It's always better to have it out in the open and get both people's perspectives and talk through it than it is to hide and sit and wonder and not really know. It's kind of like the advice you'd get from your dad when you liked a girl back in grade school, and you'd sit around and you'd say, "I don't know, she likes me. I'd really like. She's so pretty." And your dad would say, "Well, just go ask her to be your girlfriend," and you'd work yourself up, afraid she'd say no or afraid she'd say yes. And at the end of the day, it really wasn't that big a deal when you went and did it. You know, and and people tend to do that in their marriage also, as though in their mind they'll work themselves up to a point that they can't have that conversation. And you got to remember, it's important to have that conversation. It's important to be able to have that relationship where you can go ask a tough question, and even if it causes an argument, you're secure in the fact that you know that you can have that argument and that conversation and then not break down your relationship.
That's fantastic, actually. And just listening to some of the points he brought up are things that I think about for all relationships. It doesn't just have to be your marriage. Now, marriage, yeah, that'd be most important. But I mean, just thinking about some of the conversations me and you have had over the years, and I'm like, look, dude, this is how it is. This is what I think about X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
And we worked through it, and we're still best buddies because of it. Because you got to have that open communication and tell them truthfully how you're feeling,
Right.
and it it always works out from every experience I've had so far. So I think deciding to do those hard conversations and to have a good open communication that is safe, yeah, that's so important.
Right. Yep. 100%. I mean, like you said, even with friendships, if you can't have a tough conversation with a friend
Yeah,
and not expect them to lose their cool and go away and not be your friend anymore, what kind of friend do you really have?
right.
You know what I mean? You know, a lot of my friends, there's one guy in particular, his name's Tyler Yeager, worked with him at Axis. I've known him for probably 19 years now. And we would get in yelling matches with each other when I worked at Axis. He was a maintenance guy, and I ended up in engineering over time, you know. And we would disagree, and we would get mad, and we would yell at each other, and people would look at us like we were crazy. And then 3 minutes later, after yelling, our favorite line, whichever one of us got to it first, was, "Okay, you ready to have a hug now?" And the other one would say, "No, yes." And we give each other a hug, and then we'd go back to work.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of funny looks from people when two grown men are hugging each other in the middle of a factory. But we were really good friends. And we weren't going to let that disagreement ruin us. We're just venting our frustrations. Everybody gets mad. You got to have those friends around you that you can have those conversations with.
Yeah.
I would always say that I'm like hesitant to say anything at this point. I would always say that I would rather have two guys hugging in a factory than two guys fist fighting. Because that would, I mean, I used to work at UPS, and we would have it to where two guys would go out in the back and just fist fight each other. Now, granted, most of guys can literally fight, and then right after that, you can become buddies with each other again.
Mm-hmm.
I would be very anxious to know if women are the exact same way. Because from what I've known from experience, it doesn't seem like that they're like that. They might hate that person for years on.
You're walking on dangerous territory, aren't you, bud?
I walk on dangerous territory all the time, but I do think you're both right. It is very important to be able to have those conversations with anybody, and if I always say, if you're the person that the conversation, like if somebody brings that conversation into you, don't instantly think that that you have to win the fight. It's not about you beating the other person. The only way that it wins in the end is you both come out on top. I mean, if not, then you're both laying on the ground, probably bleeding out from beating each other up.
Well, and I've heard you guys, make mention of a lot of military stuff, and biggest thing about an argument is it's not always about the battle, right? It's about the outcome of the war. One battle doesn't decide that outcome typically. So, one argument shouldn't dictate how your friendship works over time. So, it's important to have that relationship built up to where it can withstand those battles and the outcome work out in everybody's favor.
It seems for some people that's really hard to do. Like I'm sure all of us at one time think that you're right. Like on one of the episodes of The Chosen that I was talking about, I think I maybe talked about it with you. Heck, I might have even talked about it with you. But there's a scene in it to where Matthew used to be a tax collector,
Mm-hmm.
and Peter or Simon Peter, whatever you want to call him, at one time just could really not really make any kind of connection, be friends with Matthew because of him being a tax collector. And at one time, at least in the show, I'm anxious to know if you know if this lines up real well. But Matthew goes to Jesus and asks why that they're butting heads with each other or whatever. And he was actually thinking Matthew was thinking that Peter should apologize to him because the way that Peter treats him. And then Jesus was like, dude, you need to kind of check yourself on here. It was like you did make it very hard for them. And then when he went and finally apologized to Peter, Peter didn't know how to take it because he never thought in his life it would be like that. And in the very end of it, Jesus says that forgiveness is a gift. And so Peter goes up and gives Matthew a hug, and they end up making it out in the end. But all that just to say, if you're the one that thinks that this is why conversation's so important, especially the hard ones, because if you think that you're the person that's right, I mean, you're obviously just trying to, mostly in the heat of the moment, at least you're seeing it from your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice. You need to bring somebody else in to even check yourself. And there's been both of times I know exactly what you're talking about, where we're like, "Hey, dude, I just don't know how I feel about this," and then we sit there and we talk it out and we figure it out, and now we're still best buds because of it. So that's awesome in general. That kind of leading into another question that I kind of wanted to ask you, and we talked about it very briefly one time at Allen, where you used to work. How is the right thing to do always the thing that God wants you to do? And the question that I'll ask leading into that is, and we were having this conversation multiple times, and I asked you this question already once, but I'm not going to lead with the question. I'm going to lead with something else. In history, which we all know history is written by the victor most of the time. For an example, the Boston Tea Party, was that the right thing to do? Was to start what do you want to call it here? A revolt, I guess is a good word. Was that the right thing to do? And the reason why I'm asking this question is at that time they were throwing a fit over a tax that was like 2%. Am I wrong or something around there? Or whatever. Yeah, and now we're getting taxed like 8%. Now I'm not saying that we need to rise up, and the objective is not to kill everyone. That's definitely not the objective. The objective would actually be to try to bring everyone together to where you could help solve the thing. But was that the right thing to do? Because if it was, why does somebody else need to step up to do something?
So I'm not completely versed on the Boston Tea Party. I know what it was. I know why it happened, and it was because of tax that the British put on the import of the tea. Right?
Right.
Was that the right response? I can't answer that because I wasn't there in that time. And sometimes right, you have to have a sense of perspective of when the decision was made to act on that decision. So, was it correct? And I'm assuming that you're looking at this sort of in a biblical way. Of was that a Christian way to act? Is that kind of what you're asking?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Because I have a very hard time sometimes distinguishing things that we do that's, and I'm saying we as a collective is like a country
Right.
that we do, and is that the right thing to do? And I'm I don't know. I'm having a hard time with that because just go ahead and let me know what you think.
All right. Can I answer your question? Wasn't a question?
Was it a question?
No. I want to answer you with a question.
Go for it.
Okay. So you're the ancient Israelites. You've been freed from Egypt. You've wandered around the desert for 40 years to make a 2-day walk. Thank God for Apple Maps now, right?
That's right. That's right. Even though that's definitely led me astray multiple times, but continue.
It's better than walking 40 years to make a 2-day journey.
Very true.
So, you're the ancient Israelites. You've been shown the promised land. Moses laid down, he's dead. And they're going out to conquer the promised land now. What does God tell the Israelites whenever they go to battle with these other cities and towns in this area that he said has been set aside for them to have?
Does he say something about killing every one of them or something like that?
Kill every man, woman, child, livestock, and burn all the homes and get rid of all the treasure. Actually, I think he said take the treasure, but burn the houses. leave nothing behind.
Why does he say that?
Was that the right decision? You don't get to answer a question or ask a question in the middle of my question.
I I guess if God told them to, then
Okay,
it's got to be right.
but we weren't there.
No,
Right,
no, like I physically was not there.
right.
Right.
Were you at the Boston Tea Party?
Well, something I got to get off my chest. No, I was not there.
So I wasn't either. So it sounds very harsh at the time, but I also believe that our forefathers were Christian men who were leading up to a revolution for a certain specific need that they had. History likes to tell us that, Christianity has no place in America, that America doesn't have anything to do with old Christianity, and that's not true. The Pilgrims, why did they come here in the first place? They came here for religious freedom, right?
Right.
And so if they came here for religious freedom, and then our forefathers were coming here or were born here, I don't know all of their backgrounds, but they all came to this country for, mostly religious reasons. And the Revolutionary War was fought because England had given them permission to come over here and pursue these freedoms. And then when they realized that it was working out and people were happy and more people wanted to come, they started imposing taxes on these people to try to put them back under the thumb, so to say. And whenever they started oppressing them again after they had received this freedom, which I believe was a gift from God, because now they had the freedom to worship. Basically it was a breakaway from the Roman Catholic Church, right?
Right.
Church of England, which is the breakaway from the Roman Catholic Church. So in doing this, they were under oppression the same way that the Hebrews were under the Egyptian rule. Not quite as bad. They weren't getting beat to death. But if you look at it in the same kind of context, they decided to revolt because they had found this freedom that was trying to be stripped away from them. And so they fought back. And then Britain fought back harder, and then it led to a declaration of war and a declaration of independence that thank God we have today in this country, because those men stood up for what they believed in and for what they thought this country and this land that they came and founded and started spreading out, multiplying in, what they wanted it to stand for. Now, does it still stand for that? Somewhat. We've lost a lot of our values along the way, but do I still think this is the greatest place in the world to live? Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Does America have her problems? Absolutely. I'm not even going to go off on that tangent. But I will say that there's not people in America that are trying to float on tires and water bottle rafts across an ocean to get away from it. Right?
Oh yeah.
But there are people every day making life or death decisions trying to make it to our shores. If it was that bad, why would they do that? If it was that bad, why aren't we running away from it? And if it was actually as bad as some people would want us to think, why are we not standing up and doing more? Here we go.
I don't know why it just dawned on me. Me and this guy have talked about this quite a bit. What about the ideology of what was the dollar worth? They didn't even use dollars yet, right? They had coins back in the day. So what was 2% equivalent to in today's time? That's what I want to know. How high was that tax truly? Because 2% of 100 is different than 2% of 5.
Yep.
So if their dollar wasn't worth but a third or whatever, I don't know the exacts. What would that be the equivalent of today?
I don't know the answer to that, but I don't know. Let me generally ask you this question. Do you feel like nowadays there is a lot of more people against you than there was, say, 10 years ago? You don't think so? Does is is your is your life is your do you not feel like your life is any tougher now than it used to be?
I was kind of in that boat, and I've really been pondering this because it's something that's been weighing on me. This thought process that, oh, it's harder now than it was. And even I was in a meeting the other day, and some of the gentlemen in the meeting with me, wiser, they know a lot about what's going on with the economy and et cetera, et cetera. And one guy was like, "Yeah, I feel bad for my son trying to buy a house right now and start a family and this and that." But those same men, if you ask them how hard it was on them, it was hard to buy a house and start a family. So it's no different. It just appears that way. And I think it goes to what David was saying, right? Take it all the way back to when they were oppressed, right? I have no oppressor in that sense of like, I have to go work this job and I have to do these tasks for these hours and then slave away and I'll make a penny. Or they'll give me food. That's my payment, it's food. You know, I can go to work wherever I want to work. I can buy a house wherever I want to buy a house. Now, is it going to be easy? No, but it doesn't. I don't think it's ever been easy.
I think our standards for what we expect to get have been raised tremendously. So look at the houses that are being built now, right? And the houses that are being built now, 15 to 1800 square foot, and they're on a third acre of ground, and they're super nice, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, typically brick outside, nice shingle roofs, neatly manicured yard. Think back 50 years ago, what houses looked like. Masonite siding, 2 bedroom, 1 bath, you know, maybe a quarter-acre yard if you were lucky, maybe a lot. Lots weren't, you know, very, I mean, lots were a big thing back in the day instead of going by acreage. So I think some of this, it's perception of what we deserve whenever we spend our money. We spend our money now and we think that we should get the new shiny thing. You know, our dads and our grandpas and our great grandpas, they didn't start out with the new shiny thing. They may ended up towards the end of their life with something nice. They didn't start that way. They started out buying a little rundown 1 bedroom, 1 bath shack that probably actually didn't have a bathroom. The bathroom was outside, and you picked it up and moved it every couple of weeks because the poop hole got full, right? And that's what they started in, where they were taking blankets. I remember as a kid that we would take blankets and plastic wrap and put it over the windows in the wintertime because windows were drafty. And you put blankets up in the hallway and you segregated out the heat and where the heat was going to go in the house. I decided that I didn't want to have to put my, or not have to, but I wanted to try to do a little better when I bought my first home. Did I have to? No, that was a perfectly fine way to live. It's everybody's perception. I mean, let's talk about social media. I'm going to bang on it for a second. Perception of life, perception of quality of life has drastically changed. It's drastically changed how people view culture. It's drastically changed how people view their purchases, how people view their identity as a whole. So if you see somebody your age who maybe went to college and got lucky and got a great gig or started out with some mommy daddy money, either way, I used to be mad at the people that started off with what I like to call mommy daddy money.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, good for them. Good for their parents being able to give them that. Did I have that? No. Was I a little salty about it in the beginning? Yeah, I was. But I've learned to accept the fact that not everybody's going to have the same thing, and that's okay. We all have allotted things in our life that we're gonna get. And part of the, Christian walk, we've been talking about this a lot, is being okay with the lot that you've received. It's okay to strive to do better for yourself, but first you have to come to the realization that what you've been given is enough. If that's as good as it ever got, is that enough? And for me, that was really hard for me to grasp. My wife frustrates me to no end in that because she's a very content person, and I'm historically not a very content person. So if we were living in a shack, she'd make the best of it. I would hate myself. Or I would have. Now, sometimes I wish I lived in a shack.
It's less to clean.
It's less to clean, less to upkeep. Nobody expects you to have a nice yard if you live in a shack. I hate mowing grass. Actually, my daughter's boyfriend mows my grass now. He started a little lawn mowing company, and I was like, great, here's your first yard. Get after it.
Get after it, son.
So, in all of this, I think it's, perception of how hard things are. I don't think that things are necessarily, 50% harder than they used to be. I think it's the perception of what we think we should have at a certain age that has changed and put that pressure on us.
Yeah, like the house I grew up in and that my dad purchased, double wide trailer. Everybody who ever come to our house was like, dude, your house is beautiful. And growing up, I always heard people downing people living in trailers. And they'd ask me, John, do you have a home or a trailer? I said, a home? I didn't even realize the difference at first.
Right.
Yeah. And people, then they would come, they'd be like, John, you live in a trailer. And then they'd be like, good Lord, this is the nicest house I ever been to.
Yep. I mean,
Okay.
double wide's what I grew up in.
Yeah. And so still live there today. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a beautiful place, gets the job done, and something that my dad helped to teach me is this idea that look, you only make a finite amount. There's X amounts what you're gonna get this year. Okay. So what are you gonna do with it? Do you want a big house that takes 75% of that? Or a small house takes 25% of it a year. The rest of that you can spend on your family. Go do stuff. So
Is there a certain point though to where you know you're being taken advantage of that you think you should do something?
We're going back to the Boston Tea Party now.
Yeah, or anything. Like if say you were in school and some guy was picking on you, but he was picking on you for some BS stuff, or he didn't like the color of your shirt or whatever the heck it was, or something like that. You just try to be the best person that you can. I've always tried at least and just ignore it. Now there's a certain point though, I think we all agree here. It's like I don't want to ever kill anybody ever. I really don't want to do that. But if someone breaks in my house and threatens to kill my wife, I would think the thing that I need to do is probably stop the threat. Now, whether that's kill him or just stop him, whatever it is. I mean, but at a certain point in anything, do you not think? I mean, sometimes it feels like, from what I see, read, do research on, that we are taken advantage of now. I mean, we just sent $9 billion to Ukraine when we need a border. Is there ever a point to where, and I'm not saying there needs to be an uprising or a revolution or anything, but do you think when does the line get crossed to where something needs to change?
So, do you want the David answer?
I want the David answer.
When did the line change for Jesus?
When did the line change for Jesus?
Yeah, when did they cross the line?
People hanging him on the cross and not obeying his word.
What did he say while he was on the cross? Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
So you should forgive them no matter what.
This is a tough subject
Very much.
because our minds and what the world teaches us that we should do are completely different from what the Bible teaches us we should do. 10 years ago, I would say let's have a revolt and let's, rise up and everything. As I get older, I calm down a little bit. I was pretty fiery when I was younger, had a pretty quick temper. But, you dive deeper into the Word, Jesus was calm unto death. Then he came back, and then what did he tell us? What did Paul tell us about it? He said, you have to pick up your cross and crucify yourself daily. He didn't say, you know, pick up your cross, on Sundays and crucify yourself and look like a good person, let people see your vehicle in a church parking lot on Sunday. He said daily. He also told us that we should, be in constant prayer. Now, does that mean we should be driving down the road with our eyes closed? No. That's dumb. He did.
That's why they made autopilot for testing. So you can pray while you're driving.
Okay. But it's about having that constant mindset, right? Of having your mind set on godly things. And so, you brought up politics, and I know what you're trying to weasel me into, and so we're just going to get into it, right? So, I don't believe that politics can be fixed until Christians step up and do what they've been called to do. Now, as Christians, we've not been called to step up and to persecute people or to talk down to people, but we've been called to stand up and, spread the word and to live a life like Christ would, right? So, in doing that, we have certain responsibilities that we're supposed to be held to. And so, it makes it difficult when you get into a worldly position where the world is looking at you in, unchristian eyes. So I've asked Dylan this question. I'm going to pose this question to you. Because we always like to bag on politicians, right? We always talk about the president or the senator or the governor or the mayor and how dumb they are and how terrible of a job they're doing, or they passed this bill and you just can't believe they would do that, and you don't understand how people would let this through. Well, first off, I just, go ahead and say that the people that let it happen, me and you, whether you voted for them or not, the division that the country has had put in place has affected us just as much as it has anybody else. Whether we whether we went into it knowing that this was going to happen or not, the division that's happened, we all have a small responsible party in that, because it's like being on a team, right? If you're on a team, everybody wins together, everybody loses together, everybody does their part, or everything falls apart. And that's kind of where we're at. And so, let's put yourself, you're a politician, right? You're the governor of New Mexico. And you're doing a good job. You're standing up for your belief system, and you're helping pass laws and put in place, and you've been, stepping around the politics of it really well, and everybody seems to like you. Drug cartel member comes in unannounced, and he shows up, and say you have a wife and 3 kids and a dog, and he lays a picture over and says, here's your wife, here's a picture of your 3 kids, here's your dog, here's your nanny, here's your nanny dropping your kids off at daycare, here's your wife going every Wednesday to get her hair done and going to the salon every Friday morning at 10 o'clock to get her nails done. and you just look at him and you say, that's a lot of really creepy personal information that you just laid out in front of me. What do you want? And he says, it's simple. I want 100 tons of cocaine crossing through the border every 2 weeks. And I need you to make safe passage for me. In return for that, I'll give you $1 million per shipment and guarantee the safety of your family. If you don't, I know exactly where every one of your family members are right now, and they won't make it through the day. You have 30 seconds to decide what to do.
30 seconds. Oof.
We're on the timer. It went away.
I would tell him, I can't help but this the way it works for me is I'd tell him, okay, you got a deal. And as soon as he walked out, I'd gather my people up and ship them off wherever I got to ship them. I don't care, ship them somewhere. I've got, I would have somebody I could trust. They'd go live with them for however long I needed. And I'd do whatever I had to do, whatever I thought was right, finish the term out, and get these guys busted and have my life put on the line or run from it. Whatever I would choose to do for myself, so be it. But I would.
What would Jesus do in that situation?
Sheesh.
This is why the conversation was so interesting. It's because say you know all your family's Christians, and you're dead certain 99% that they're going to heaven, and now you're going to have to make a choice to go against what you know is right. Now I'm all about protecting your family. You know I am, but it's, do you do the thing that you should do to be the best Christian possible, which is say the same instance he's talking about, but the guy says you come up and you run the country or whatever, and he says, uh, I know where your family is, I know where they go, I can do anything that I want with them. The only thing I want you to do is stop preaching the gospel at all. It's outlawed completely. United States, you're no longer allowed to talk about God. What would you do? And then it bears the question that he asked me.
Well, I already know the question, and so if that was my option, I don't know. It's a lot harder when they. It's different whenever you give me somebody else's fate versus my own. If it's something I've caused right here, something I'm doing.
It's easy for us to lay down our own life.
Right.
But when you have somebody else's family,
Yeah.
your own family, kids, babies, people that's not your family but you're in charge of, say like a nanny,
Right.
it's a lot harder to put those people's lives on you and make that decision for them.
Right.
I'd give up my life in a heartbeat for my family.
Yeah.
And do it with a smile on my face. Wouldn't bother me a bit. Taking my family's life away from them from a decision I made, it's a lot harder decision to make.
Yeah.
So I pose that question because it's hard and it's hard to think about, but then think about, yourself and how strong you are in your faith and trying to make that decision to do the right thing and what you have at stake. Now take it a step further and you're faithless and you have to make that decision. It's not a hard decision anymore.
Mm-mm.
Because you think that you're doing the right thing because you're doing the thing that the world has told you to do, which is protect your family.
Right.
Right? So we as a nation have put people into leadership positions who it's not a hard decision for them to make. They don't have to think about it. They make the easy decision. So, that's when it comes down to politics, this is what Dylan was bringing up was political views.
Right.
And it all boils down to we as a nation have put people in leadership positions over us that don't align with our values. Some of them may, but they're too scared to come out and say it. And then I believe that being too scared to publicly announce it diminishes their faith and diminishes their decision making abilities in that situation. So then it comes down to us. Why are we allowing people to get into these positions that don't hold the values that we do? And then you take it a step further, and it comes down to us and what we are doing. And the simple question is what are we scared of? You know, that's where Dylan wants us to get to. Is, I mean, seriously, it's what are we scared of as Christians, as followers of Christ, people who openly claim to follow a man who followed his beliefs all the way to death, and then the men who followed him directly into death, preaching his word, and in spite of that, thousands and thousands of churches have sprung up all over the nation, and our nation was founded on the principle of following these words and getting away from a dynasty and a culture that was trying to oppress what they believed to be, true doctrine, and they were pushing false doctrine. Excuse me, lunch. So at the end of the day, we can go through history and we can look at all these great sacrifices that have been made. What sacrifices have the Christians of today made? What are we so afraid of to stand up and tell people what we believe and why we believe it? We don't have to be hateful about it. And we're never going to agree with people who are out in the world for most things. I'm really good friends with a guy who refuses to acknowledge the existence of God. And that's fine. We're still friends. We still talk. He's a good guy. He's helped me out a lot through the years. So you won't ever hear me say that only good people or only Christians can be good people, because I know that that's false. I've witnessed that. I probably used to think that, but I've been proven wrong numerous times. So if there are good people out there who still got a lot of the same moral values and moral fiber that we have, they just don't believe exactly the way we do, why are we so scared to stand up for what we believe in? Other people aren't scared to stand up and try to trample our voices down. They're not scared to stand up and trample our beliefs. Why? Because we're scared to stand up and say, I believe in Jesus. I believe that the Bible is the true Word of God. So, what are we scared of?
So this made me think about something I talked about with our friend Connor the other day, and it's beautiful. The timing of all this is it's divine. And so, do y'all know who Tim Kennedy is?
No.
He's a Special Forces Green Beret, MMA fighter in the UFC, many other things. At one point in his career, he was at the top of ISIS's most wanted list. The FBI called him and told him, "Hey, we just captured some people who's looking to they're wanting to hurt you or your family." He said, "Really?" They said, "Yeah." And he had connections with some people who like ran the news or whatever. So he said, "Hey, when could you get me on the news?" Gets on the news. I think it was CNN at the time. And he said, "Here's my home address. Come to my house. If you're willing, if you want me that bad, this is where I'm at." Okay. And he stood for what he believed in. He was fighting the war on terror, on the war on terrorism. And he believed so strongly in that he was willing to tell him, "This is where I live in Texas. Come get it." Now, did his wife like that? No. I listened to a little bit of the story. She and the kids left for a couple weeks, but
Yeah, can't say I blame them.
but at the same time, that's a group. That's not just, like That's a terroristic group, and he's willing to put his life on the line because he believes what they did and what they stand for is wrong, and that he was doing the right, and he's willing to lay it all right out on the news, national television. So
Even though I give mad credit to all those guys, but and we're no near the tier they are. But I think there's so many people that's still like that though. But I would love to hear Tim Kennedy's response is if, say, his wife and his kids went off to go wherever they were, and the next thing he gets in the mail is a picture of his wife and kids. It's like, sorry, buddy, you thought you trusted these people. Well, I got them. What are you gonna do now? And I'm sure he would be like, we're gonna go kick their door down, which is awesome. I think that's cool. But the thing that honestly, the thing that I'm having the biggest trouble with this conversation is the chances of that happening we all think so slim, but I do think there is a good amount of corruption that goes on nowadays. Like, well, kind of what you were saying. Like, you were saying that it's like it does fall on us who we vote for and who we put into office and who we believe in. But what if that whole system's rigged? And but so thinking that for a minute, and you're one of the guys. I've never asked you this question either, but I'm anxious to hear your opinion because I feel like we are all still in a world that is very chaotic nowadays. I think we would all agree we're about to go into World War III, possibly whatever. Uh, every time I meet you, you're in a great attitude. Every time I meet you, you're in a good attitude. I would hope y'all would say the same about me. How do you how do you tell other people out there, especially Christians, that you still need to stand up and do things even though you know the outcome? Because all as Christians, the Bible lays out how everything's going to happen. And even though we win, and I'm saying we win because we get to go to heaven, that there is a little piece in some people's mind that has the fear of everything ends. Like it's not the same that you have anymore. So I'm sure there's people out there that have a hard time sometimes distinguishing why am I doing all this if I know the outcome. If that's pretty much the easiest way that I'm saying.
Okay. So, again, I'm going to answer your question starting with another question. What what is our job as Christians?
To spread the gospel, and as one guy at my church says, try to uh, make heaven overcrowded. That's what he says.
I like that.
Yep. Try to get as many people in heaven as possible.
Okay, so let me tell you a story. I like this analogy for this is something that I teach to my youth group and why it's important to go around and tell people about the gospel. So let's say that the world ended in 30 seconds and we zap up to heaven and we're in two lines. We're in the good judgment line where we're just going to be judged by our works because our faith in Jesus has covered us with his blood and our sins don't hold anything against us, or we're going to the great white throne judgment where we're going to be judged by everything that we've done on earth and then sent to the pits of hell. Everybody has to go through one line or the other, right? So let's say that happened in 30 seconds and us three pop up there and we're hanging out in line and you look across 20 foot away and a guy you know, and as I say this, you're both going to think of somebody that you know that is standing in that line right now, and he looks over at you and he says, "What's going on here? I don't understand what's happening." And so you explain it to him. And he breaks down and he said, "If you knew that this was the end result, why didn't you never tell me? I thought we were friends. If we were friends like I thought we were, would you have not at least warned me that this could happen?"
I'm not thinking the same guy. Stop.
But that's why it's important to tell people it's going to come, and we never know when it's going to be here. It could be in 300 years, it could be in 300 seconds, or it could be 1,000 years from now. I can't tell you. I ain't got a clue. But I do know that it's going to happen. So think about when that happens, and obviously I don't really believe that we're all going to be standing in line side by side. It's going to be a lot different than that. But in that scenario, it makes you, it kind of triggers a thought in your head of why it's important to tell people, co-workers, friends, family, people that, you've run into that are acquaintances that you really enjoy being around. It's our job to make sure everybody hears the gospel. So if you can immediately relate that story to someone that you know and you've never tried and you're not sure if they know, if you're not sure that they know about the gospel, you might as well just assume that they don't know about the gospel. And so if you can think of that person standing in that other line and you can feel that heartbreak for you letting that person down, because I believe in that moment there will still be pain and there will still be sorrow, because it talks in Revelations about a great wiping away of tears. But it's not like it's immediate, you know. So you're gonna feel some pain and some sorrow and some sadness if you see this happening. And again, I don't know that that's what it's gonna be like. I'm not 100% certain. But if it is, do you want that on your conscience? Do you want to see, a really good friend from high school that you run into occasionally at Walmart, and you felt that urge to tell him and you never did it because you just assumed he knew, and now he's standing in the other line next to you and he's got his 3 kids and his wife beside him because nobody ever said anything to him. That's why I think it's so important. And that brings it around again to the point of, what are we so scared of trying to tell people? Our main focus is telling people about Christ. And if you put it into that perspective of what happens if you don't, that ought to tear your heart up. So, what are we so scared of about spreading the gospel? Because someone might make fun of us a little bit. Someone may not like what we say. I've been made fun of my whole life. You know,
I think you could almost sum it up in the what are you scared of? You're scared and worried about worldly things.
right?
That's the only thing if you think about it, because I I've now luckily I've never been put in a position where somebody's threatened me not to talk about the gospel,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, even you going back to the family thing that you're talking about, I don't think, just knowing you, the little bit I've known you, I think you'd go talk to the gospel about anybody. And I don't care who it is. Even if somebody said told you not to do it, I think that you would do it. The only thing that would ever hold you back from saying climbing the ranks, like what if I said you're gonna right now, I want you to run to be a politician, and your main goal is to seek the wisdom of God, and I want you to tell everybody that. You have no problem telling people that the wisdom of God or anything about God. The problem that you have is the one chance that somebody wants to do something worldly to your family.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely the only thing that holds Christians back is you thinking about worldly things.
Yep.
So that's the think about that, guys. Think about that.
What, y'all want my take? I
Yeah.
thought that was beautiful. Well put. I mean, I was talking about with Dylan the other day. It's been a while since I went to like a movie and kind of just forgot about everything else and was able to relax and pay attention.
Mm.
What you have to say, David, I am relaxed and I'm paying attention. And I forgot at one point. I'm in Judsonia. I'm in like I'm just listening. I'm honed in. It's it's so good, you know. Yeah, the old creeper shed.
I love shed. I told John while you were outside, I started touching this. I said, ever since I started watching your podcast, I just wanted to touch your wall and know what it felt
Right.
like.
Dude, I can't tell you how long we've had to work on this thing. If we've tried Gorilla Tape, I think the only thing that's holding it in right now is spray adhesive, because right behind this is just insulation. Like, we didn't even put a wall up or anything.
Yeah. The ADD part of my brain wants to go do 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 do.
As long as, like it'd probably fall off.
It didn't first time. I won't do it again though.
No, you,
Trying to be an adult.
you keep doing it.
No, don't tell me that.
Is there, like I said, you being such a good-minded guy, is there anything that does keep you up at night?
That's an unfair question. I have a sleep disorder.
Well,
I'm just kidding. I do have trouble sleeping at night. I mean, honestly, I suffer from anxiety, and so I do let myself get bogged down from time to time. And some days it's really hard to keep a positive outlook. You know, I'm in a good place today, and I'm in a good frame of mind. I really enjoy doing stuff like this. I say that I've never been on a podcast, but
first time.
I'm having a blast.
Right on, dude. We are too.
But things that keep me up at night, I tend to look back at past mistakes that I've made, and I think the biggest regret that I really have is not being a better husband and father earlier on in my life, and straying away whenever I did for so long and trying to hide from it. But in the middle of those thoughts, I get the realization that if I didn't realize how bad a husband and father I was being, I wouldn't have been able to step up and be the husband and father that I feel like I am now. If I wouldn't have strayed away and done some of the dumb things that I did in my younger years, I wouldn't have the perspective on life that I do now. I mean, I should probably be dead. Some of the things that I did when I was younger. But I'm not. I'm still here. I lived through a lot of stupid stuff, and I feel like I gained a lot of wisdom from it. I've got a lot of life experience that, your typical deacon in a church usually doesn't have. Uh, you know, youth teacher usually doesn't have quite the background that I do. I'm kind of a unique specimen from that.
You're a good case study.
Yeah, but I also feel like it made me work a little harder at the person that I wanted to be. And I'm still working on myself now. I'm still not the person that I want to be. No, I don't feel like I'm the person that I could be, but I work on it, and it's where I'm trying to get to. You know, I've got the pedestal set up here, and even though I know it's an unreachable pedestal, it's not going to stop me from working towards it.
That's right. I had a friend of mine that, sadly I'm not friends with him anymore, but in school, and he would ask me all the time that, I would say every day to try to strive to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of my sayings versus my other one was called "Make the Day Worth It," and they all went together. But my buddy would be like, "How?" And this is not somebody that believed in God. And he was like, "How?" He's like, "How? There's no way you can be perfect." He goes, uh, "Even you guys believe there's only one perfect guy." He was like, "How? It's an unreasonable thing to try strive to be perfect." I said, "Yeah, I understand that." I said, "But if you strive to be perfect, you just have to understand you never will be, but you can come awful close."
Right.
And that will guarantee, I mean, I will say guarantee, lead you to a more fulfilling life than not trying to do anything at all.
Right. Well, I've had, people come up and say, well, what if you're wrong? What if your faith is wrong? I said, what did I lose?
Right.
They said, well, you lost your Sundays. And I said, I lost my Sundays being around good people
Yeah.
and getting to hang out with the youth and the young adults and help them to be better people. I lost time learning about how to be a better person and reading about a person who I consider to be perfect and trying to be more like him. You know, I I lost time playing music with some really good friends and having jokes and going out and playing music together and doing something that I really enjoy. I said, tell me really, what did I lose? At the end of the day, if it all means nothing and it all ends and it doesn't mean a thing and we just fade away, what did I lose?
Yeah.
I didn't lose anything. I gained a group of friends, I gained relationships, and I gained a deeper sense of what my life means to other people and how to serve people and make their lives better, which in turn made my life more rich and fulfilling. If I'm right, what do you lose?
That's right. Preach it.
You know,
I agree.
I said, I had somebody ask about faith, and the best way that I've heard it described was from Jody, our associate pastor. He said, would you rather, if you're walking out on a frozen lake, would you rather have a whole lot of faith in a half inch of ice or a little bit of faith in 6 inches of ice? I'd rather have a little bit of faith in 6 inches of ice.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way I look at it is I'm not losing anything. I'm gaining everything. And if I'm right, which obviously I believe I am, or I wouldn't spend as much time studying about it, learning about it, and speaking about it, then I've gained eternal life from it. So, win-win for me.
Win-win. Win-win for all of us, I think.
Yeah.
So as you know, this podcast is called the Skeptics Podcast.
Yeah, I knew there had to be something
There is, but I'm anxious to what goes on in your mind there because um, there's a bunch of things. Now I'm probably way more skeptic than he is. There's a bunch of things that I think is going on that's just wild. But is there anything that you want to talk about with two smart scholars like ourselves?
You told me not to bring questions.
Well, you got anything that you want to talk about?
We gotta have something. Come on.
Let me think.
I'll always ask this question. Have you ever heard? What do you think happened to the Malaysia plane?
I've heard a lot about this plane, brother.
I know. It's one of my top conversations I'm going to have with God when I go to heaven. We don't have to talk about this if you don't want.
I'll be honest, I don't know that much about it. I know that it went down and it disappeared. Did they ever find pieces of it?
Some guy said he found like 5 pieces of it in all these different islands within like a week.
Confirmed?
No, they're not confirmed. He found parts of a plane, but there's no way to link them back to the plane.
So it doesn't exist.
The plane? Or just him finding the parts?
Him finding the parts.
No, I personally don't think so.
Okay. So, plane, trying to remember the story. Tell me the story of what happened. Refresh my memory.
So there was a plane that apparently just had a bunch of regular people on it, and multiple things happened to it very quickly, and it ended up kind of just going off the GPS, and nobody ended up knowing what happened to it. So essentially, when they were flying, the first thing it is they lost communications to the plane. The next thing that happened like that, somebody turned the black box off. So, and after that, it started doing this really weird pattern in the sky, and essentially just flown into the ocean until it ran out of gas. A lot of people think, I think the biggest thing right now going on with it is a lot of people think the driver or the pilot was just trying to commit suicide. But I don't know why you would go through all this stuff if you were just literally just going to run the plane into the ground. Now, there has been skeptics like ourselves that thinks that there's been people on this plane that had information that was quite valuable. Like there was one person believes that there was another person on the plane that was a scientist that was almost finding the cure for AIDS, and they didn't want.
Can't have that.
Can't have that, or maybe even had the cure for cancer.
Can't have that either.
So
cures don't make money. Treatments do.
right, yeah, that fly dude is honest right now, son. But So yeah, that's just one that I always like to kind of lead into. Is there anything that you ever are you do you consider yourself like a conspiracy theorist?
Oh yeah,
So what's one of your biggest ones?
9/11.
I'm right there with you.
I think the United States caused 9/11.
Did you watch the Sean Ryan podcast with the one chick, the newest one? So do you know who Sean Ryan is?
No,
Military guy. He does podcasts just like this, but he's got relationships with people in the CIA or whatever. And this one chick
you
came
should
on,
work on that.
dude. I'm trying. I'm trying. Trust me. My FBI guy's reading my phone right now. He's like, I'm getting all the dirt on this guy. But
I put mine over there so I couldn't hear me as well.
right, he had a lady from the CIA came on, and she was talking about there has been reports in the last couple of days, and take it, this chick was in the CIA. She made say what this, made say that, whatever. But she was saying that there was three guys that was in Syria like a couple weeks ago that had the same profile and matching faces as the guy that was on the plane for 9/11. So it's like,
I think we just wanted to go to war.
I think that was part of it for sure.
War makes money.
100%.
Whether people like it or not, the war machine causes jobs, and we needed some jobs. Because, like him or not, Bill Clinton built up the job workforce when he was president. You know, take away whatever else he did. I know what he did. Just not going to give him the moment. So, George Bush had to do something else. Also, if you look at his dad, a lot of people disagree with me on this, but I put this together through a few years and I'm going to stick with it. His dad wanted to go to war with Afghanistan when he was in office, and it never quite worked out, and we had to pull back. So then the son comes in, and he's got to figure out a way to go and finish it off, right? 9/11 happens. But so,
Would this don't really correlate with it, but maybe you just have knowledge on it or whatever. You being a machinist, you've messed with a lot of material. Would you say?
yeah,
Now, I don't figure you probably ever mess with jet fuel, but
I can't say that I have.
and maybe I'm completely wrong. That's why I would love like an engineer or something like that that works on planes to be able to talk about this, because I'm generally interested in if jet fuel will burn through like rebar or big sheets of metal.
Or, you know, inch thick I beams.
Exactly. So I'm
Yeah, I'm very skeptical of that.
I do. I would almost bet 99% that we definitely wanted to go to war with something, because just like you said, it's one of the biggest money makers in the world. Like, I've heard people at aerospace places talk about how much stuff they build for like the military, Lockheed Martin, all this other stuff. These people that's making these massive government contracts going everywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you think? See, I think Obama was just like a pawn, or not Obama, Osama.
Oh, 100%.
I,
Him and George Bush Jr., they were friends.
do you think they were friends?
There's pictures of them together.
Not Obama, Osama bin Laden.
Yeah, Osama.
Really?
Yeah,
Huh?
the Bushes are oil conglomerates from down in Texas. Osama ran all the oil junk off in Afghanistan. They were like this.
Hmm. You just, you think we you think we took him out?
No,
You don't think so?
no, it was just a look-alike.
See, that's the one thing that
I think the guys who did it think that they did it,
yeah,
but I don't think.
that's wild.
Yeah, but same thing as did Hitler really kill himself?
I don't think so. I don't think a guy that has went through that much stuff to do something that he thinks is right or whatever you think he is going to go out like that. I mean, I just feel like that'd be just him disrespecting himself.
Maybe he's just a big sissy in the end.
I don't know.
I don't
Think
either.
you went to Argentina?
Yeah.
So do I.
Maybe not specifically Argentina, but I think he fled the country, and who they found wasn't actually Hitler. They said it was, and they tried to wrap it up because they just wanted things to be over and to look good. But I don't think it was him.
Isn't it? We were not allowed to get a picture of who they found. Was
Correct.
It? Yeah.
Because I think it was the Russians that actually found him.
Yeah. Because they. What the heck? I'm trying to remember where they found him in. Because they did it on that Hunt Hitler show, or where they supposedly found him at. But yeah, that's a. I would love to be able to dive really deep into a lot of. I think that period of time there was a lot of stuff that was like, whether you want to call it like innovation or anything, to where
I think there's a lot of things that happened in that time that really made leadership nervous because we were really pushing the bounds of technology, electrification, mechanical engineering, those sort of things. And I think there were definitely some guys who were really pushing the limits of what was capable, and they came up with some stuff that they put under wraps for a long time because it scared them. Because they were just dumping money.
you think it scared them.
I think it scared the leadership. I don't think they understood it enough to not be nervous about it because there's so much money pumped into it during war times. And then after World War II, look at the progression of electronics and manufacturing and mechanical engineering. Up until that point, if you took, a 100-year timeline, all the progress we made from, say, the 1800s to 1945 would fit on a scale like this. And what we should have accomplished in the past 70 or 80 years should have taken us 800 years. And because there's so much money and time and effort put into it, I think there was a lot of innovation given from wartime.
Yeah. I actually was listening to a guy who was reading a book about a leader from, I can't remember if it was World War One or maybe even something older. But either way, the ideology to get away from horses was insane because these men their whole life had grown up with horses being like the most dominant force on a battlefield. Okay, and so this guy, now they've got these motorized things or this or that, right? And he was like, no, that'll never work. He's like, a motorcycle on the battlefield or a car? He said, that's ridiculous. He said, the horse is the most dominant. Well, obviously not. But he was afraid to like see what would happen if he took a risk because he didn't want to fail. He would rather risk it and use old school technology, ride horses, use guns on horses, than make the leap and say, yeah, we should use modern technologies. That advancement was scary for him, the idea of it. But, I mean, he obviously fell behind with the times.
Yep.
Volkswagen have like a Volkswagen did something with the Nazis or something like that.
Buddy, you know I'm talking about this. That was like Hitler's baby, dog. That's his, dude, that was part of the whole propaganda. He taught these people, okay? Because Hitler's youth and stuff, like the ideology that he's pumping out. He said there will be a car in every driveway. That's a Volkswagen. There will be food on every table and Germans in a home. That's, he's guaranteed it. I mean, imagine saying, look, I know you're poor, but you know what? I'm going to make sure your family's fed and you have a car now.
Hey, the Nazis helped produce the first Titanic movie too. That is 100% true.
Okay.
The imagine having like you're watching this movie, you're like, this movie's great, and then you see you're like, wow. Has anybody ever dove really deep into like? Because didn't Hitler claim to be a Christian?
No,
Did he not?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so maybe I'm.
So
completely wrong about that.
Let's jump on the Nazi bandwagon for just a second.
Yeah, they're very interesting.
They are. So I cannot remember the name of this experiment that happened, but everybody's really quick to jump on the Nazi, beating the Nazi down bandwagon, right?
Think they should come back?
No, that's not what I'm saying. Don't you put words in my mouth. But we're as a culture, it's easy to say anybody who was a Nazi or a German in that time was a terrible person. And so I believe it was American and maybe Polish scientists that got together to do this experiment. And so they got a large group of people together and they would bring them in, and there was a lot of researchers who, filled in also. And basically the premise of it is out of these groups, one's going to be chosen to have questions asked to them, and the other one is going to be the proctor, basically. And so everybody who was going to be asked a question was actually a research assistant. And so they were taken into another room, and all of these people were given this power to ask the question. But then also, when they sat down, there was a voltage meter and there was a button. And they turned on the lights, and it was, one way glass. And what they told them was, you're going to ask them a series of questions, starting easy and getting exponentially harder. And what you're going to do if they answer a question wrong is you're going to hit this button, and it's going to send an electrical current through the chair to them. It's going to shock them, electrocute them. And then after every time you hit this button, the voltage goes up. And they made sure at the top of it that they put a sticker that said, caution, could be fatal.
Can the people in the chair see this?
No.
Okay.
They were the research assistants. They knew what was going on. So they would bring these people in and hook them up to this chair, and then one by one a person would come in with a different person, and they would start asking them these questions. And typically they'd get one or two right and then get one wrong, and they just kind of play along. They were hooked up, but they weren't actually getting electrocuted. They were just like given a light so that they knew when to play along.
Gotcha.
So they told them, they told them it was to measure intelligence under stress. But really what they were measuring is how far is someone willing to go if you're told. And so what they found was that if they could see the person, like 52 or 54%, I wish I would have read this. I didn't know we was going to end up on this subject.
This goes everywhere.
Yeah. So it was somewhere around 50% actually went up until death. And then 30% went above like 70% before they started feeling bad. But what you have to also remember is one of the scientists who would be sitting there with them behind them, at some point they all wanted to stop hitting the button, and they would say, no, I can't do this. It's too much. And then they would start pressuring them. And the scientists had a list of things to say. And so they would say, well, you have to do this. This is important for our studies. This is important for our country. There's going to be life-altering, discoveries that happen from this, and you have to take place in this. You have to push this button. And they had like 10 or 15 things that they would read off, and they would continue to push these people. Like I said, around 50% of them would end up going to the fatal overload. They said out of the 50% that didn't go to fatal, 89% of them had some sort of correlation to Christian faith, whether it be Christianity, Judaism, Catholicism, whatever. So then they changed it, and there was two more tests they did. I want to say the other one, the guys would come in like screaming and fighting and kind of acting like an animal. Like 62% of people made it to the kill phase. Because of the way they acted, they didn't see them quite as human. I think they told them that they were all inmates on death row. So they didn't feel quite as bad about them as a person, right? Then the next one They just closed off the glass. And they couldn't see them.
Probably went all the way.
It was some crazy number, like 70 or 80% of people would continue just hitting the button. They could hear the screams and cries, but there was no visual representation. It wasn't a real person at that point. And that scientists behind them berating them and running them down and telling them they had to do this. Every one of them excuse after it was done, if they got to the point and then they would go to the next one, there'd be no answer, obviously, because they were dead. And the scientists were like, you killed them.
Oh gosh.
And everybody was like, I didn't kill him. I just did what you told me to.
Right.
They had a scapegoat. They were told by someone in authority. And this goes back to our previous conversation of why leadership and authority positions are so important. This is how Nazism started. Someone with perceived authority pressured these good people. Germans were good, honest, hardworking people, just like everybody else.
Probably most people are.
And they got pressured and pushed into this system until it was all that they knew, and they'd been so indoctrinated with it, and they had that authority scapegoat. I was just doing what I was told. If you go back and you read the records of the war crime trials, it's what most of those guys said. I just did what I was told to do. I didn't want to, but I had to follow orders. Someone in charge of me, someone higher than me, is responsible for the choice that I made. Well, guess what? Here's what's crazy. You're responsible for the choice that you make. It doesn't matter who tells you what to do, but people find it easier to do more outrageous things if they have an authoritative presence as a scapegoat. I found that study very interesting. Not only, I was reading about Nazis and Hitler and stuff at the time, but even in general life. I mean, you look at prison and look at gangs. They're the same way. Someone with some sort of perceived authority calls out a hit, people go and do it, they get caught, and they think, well, it wasn't my fault. I was just doing what I was told. This is just part of it. It'll be okay. Because as humans, our brains are wired to look for that authority person. That's why it's so important for your authority to be something that's true and good, which is why we turn to Jesus as our person of authority, right? But if you give someone that authority over you, they can lead you to do some pretty sketchy things that you'd have never thought yourself possible, or that it was possible for you to do. So I just wanted to point that out before we bag too hard on the Nazis. Is they were just normal people that were put in an extremely unfortunate situation by a small group of evil men with evil intentions, and they forced that on. Now, were some of them glad to carry this out? Oh, absolutely. There's monsters everywhere. But most of them weren't really that bad a person. They just didn't know what else to do. And then their mind, as kind of like an escape mechanism, found that authority scapegoat, and that's what they went with. I always thought that was kind of an interesting study.
Oh yeah. I've got an interesting sidetrack. Do you have something you want to say about that?
Really?
All right. Y'all want to go on a tangent, a weird one?
I'm really bad at geometry.
Okay.
All right, let's hear it.
All right. You asked me to come up with something. This is gonna be a juicy one.
I thought you definitely said this is gonna be a Jewish one.
No. All right. So this is something I've been thinking about recently, and our friend Connor's been hitting me with some scripture to prove his point on the subject. All right, ghosts. What you got? I'll hit you with that question first, and then I can deep dive if you want. What you think about ghosts?
Is it more fun if we deep dive first, or should I just shut it down now?
It don't matter.
ghost in the present sense of what most people perceive as ghost, as spirits from dead people who are hanging around, whether benevolent or malevolent, either way, don't exist. It's fiction.
Okay.
Now, let's talk about spirits themselves. Angels and demons, they do exist. And they exist in our realm. You can look through stories in the New Testament when Jesus went and found the man who they chained up numerous times, and he was living in a cave and he was naked and they couldn't chain him because he was too strong. And when Jesus went up to him, he said, uh, you know, who are you? And he said, I am Legion, for we are many. And he went to cast them out, and they got scared because they knew who Jesus was. And they said, please don't send us back. Send us somewhere else so that we can still be free. Because even the demons are, subject to the torment of hell. And so that's when Jesus sent them into the pigs, and all the pigs ran into the water and drowned themselves, and then all the people ran him away. I just watched a man that was crazy and breaking chains and stuff and living in a cave all of a sudden come into his right mind, and they're mad because he killed a few pigs to save a dude.
Right.
I get the pigs were probably the livelihood, but I feel like they missed the bigger picture here.
Right.
You go back to Sodom and Gomorrah when the angel showed up to take Lot and his family out. He said, we've got to go right now.
Yeah.
The time is upon us. We were held up in spiritual warfare, and then as either Gabriel or Michael showed up and relieved us of the battle so that we could come and save you. There is spiritual warfare happening around us all the time. Demonic possession, I believe, is a real thing.
Okay.
I believe that demonic possession of a person or an entity or a structure like a house is a real thing. I also believe that angels perform acts in our world that we perceive as, a natural occurrence or small miracles or something of that nature. And I think that because even in Jesus' time and since then and before then, there was always the presence of angels and Satan, and segue from that is, the fact that people give a lot more credit to Satan than what he's actually do. He's not omnipotent, and he's not the other omni word that means that he can be in every place at one time.
Right.
Whatever that word is.
Okay.
You don't tell me what to do.
Okay.
All right. So anyway, if you look back in Job, the devil shows up to heaven and God asks him where he been. He said, well, I've been walking to and fro on the earth and, causing mischief and whatever. Why would he be doing that and then have to go up to heaven? Why couldn't he be in both places at once? Because the devil's not God. He can't do the things that God could do. So anyway, taking back to your original question, I just like to throw that in there when I'm talking about that because that irritates me. People giving way too much credit.
Right.
It's his demons and stuff running around that are causing the mischief. And another side note, if you ever get a chance to read the Screw Tape Tales, or the Screw Tape Letters, I think that's what it's called, by C.S. Lewis.
Yeah.
It's a really good representation of how demonic forces work. And it's basically just a bunch of letters about a new demon who's came to Earth, and he's writing to his uncle Screwtape about the things that he's seeing and things that he's witnessing and how to overcome those things and get past this guy's faith and beliefs and stuff. It's really interesting read, 100%.
Okay.
Recommend reading it. Screwtape Letters. It's really good. And it's not very long.
Okay.
I read it in a couple of days, like an hour a day or a couple hours a day. Wasn't bad.
Okay.
So anyway, that's kind of my stance on ghosts. Is I think that when people think they see a ghost, most of the time it's their eyes playing tricks on them, some sort of light. We get in that mode, and I'll be the first one to tell you that I like going and looking at creepy haunted places. I think it's awesome. I think it's fun. It puts you in a spooky mood.
Yeah.
But I will say that I also believe that you have to be careful when you do that, because if you open yourself up to that world, you allow that world to sometimes attach part of itself to you. And I say that because I feel like I've experienced that at one point. Yeah. And
Told y'all.
yeah. So I
I told y'all I ain't playing no games. We ain't having no exorcisms. No, 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 no.
but I honestly feel like I have let a presence attach itself to me before, and it followed me around for what. So when I was out running around, wasn't going to church and wasn't living right, we used to go and do all these weird, cemetery things and run around and the Mary Mary Quiet Contrary, why don't you come out and play and all the old stuff. But I had a few instances where some really weird stuff actually did happen,
Okay.
and I I really can't explain what it was. Like I saw figures that didn't make sense, felt presences, and then I actually feel like I brought those home. Like there was a house that me and my wife lived in when my son was little, and he was just learning to talk, and my son would talk to stuff in his room, and so like I would be sitting on the couch, and my son would be in my arms, and I'd feel odd,
Mm.
right? And my son would look up and look like something was walking past us by the couch, and he'd say, "Bye, man," and he'd lean around the corner of the hallway. Yeah, kids have a heightened perception of things, I believe,
So,
just like cats and dogs. Kids are like dogs. That's what I'm saying. You want a dog? Get a kid. Same thing for a couple of years.
so Connor says, right? They talk right there at the beginning of the Bible. He says, and Abraham gave up the ghost, right? Does that just mean gave up, like his spirit went to heaven? As
Yeah.
well as they say when you die or when you're close to death or on your deathbed, many occurrences of people being met by friendly, like angelic beings, or maybe someone you know who's in spirit form
Hmm.
to comfort you on your way. You're in this weird, like, I'm not dead yet, but I'm about to be dead. Here, let me make that easy for you. Now, here's the juicy one. I
Well,
know.
so let's stop there for a second,
Okay.
because the next part about it is like these out of body experiences where they think that they saw family members and stuff.
Yeah.
I have trouble buying into that because I'm not 100% convinced
Yeah.
that we go straight to heaven once we die.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I think that we go to sleep, and at the final resurrection call, when Christ calls everybody up from the grave, that is when we go. A lot of people find that discomforting. Now, and a lot of people will throw in that, well, there's already people in heaven. Yes, I agree. There are some people in heaven. Those people in heaven were in Abraham's bosom until Jesus died, and he paved the way from there to heaven. They were already dead and their spirits had already departed. But Paul talks about us being as one asleep until, that time to not weep for us. If you sleep for 2 days or 2 hours, you don't know the difference.
Right.
You're asleep for 2,000 years or 200 minutes, you're not going to know the difference.
Right.
Nobody cares. In the end, we all end up the same place. But I struggle to really feel like someone is up in heaven, especially when they say someone's up in heaven and looking down on us.
Yeah.
One, I don't find comfort in that, because if it's true that we do go straight to heaven when we die, I don't want my loved ones looking down here at this nasty mess that we call Earth and seeing what I'm doing and
Right.
seeing all the heartache that happens.
Right.
I want them to be up there with Jesus having a good time. And if they're not up there, then they can't look at me anyway. But I
Right.
think if they're up there, that they can't look down on us like that.
Yeah, I agree on that because it's a beautiful place. It's
Right.
not a place where you're gonna get to still experience the sorrow of being
Right.
here. Yeah.
So,
But then the other one is, it's interesting you said that story about that following you home. My grandpa, see, and I don't know why it took so long for me to hear this story, but my dad told me recently when he was stationed in England.
Mhm.
They was living in this 2-story house, and they would be downstairs, and he swore you could hear people upstairs every once in a while. It didn't happen often, but every once in a while.
Yep.
But one time, they was in the house, and they was upstairs, and he was so confident he's heard somebody downstairs. He had his daughter and his wife locked themselves in the room, and he went downstairs with a bat, I think. He was going to take care of business because he thought somebody broke into his kitchen.
Yep.
And so, for you to believe, and for a guy like that, like, yeah, I wish y'all could have met him because he's not a nonsense guy.
Right.
He's not going to sit here and be like, oh, well, yeah, let me talk about. He wouldn't have wanted to even tell that story because he's going to be like, it's nonsense.
Right.
So for him to experience something like that, it's a little bit interesting.
Well, and you say that, so the house that I had the most discomfort in,
Mhm.
my dad's the same way. He's, that's nonsense. There's always something going on.
Right.
So the house we lived in was built by an older man. Him and his wife lived there until he passed away, and we rented the house from her. I think he even died in the house, but I wasn't worried about that. But we were having weird stuff happen in our apartment from time to time. So we moved into this house, and so there was a kitchen and a dining room area, and then like an L shape from there was another like long room. I don't know what it was. Went to a living room, and then a little hallway entrance where I told you my son would look around the corner and say bye man. There's a bathroom here, his bedroom, and then my bedroom was at the very far end of the house. So my dad, we were at a cousin's house or somewhere, and I needed to come get diapers for my son. So my dad said, well, I'll ride with you. So we get there, we walk in the house. I don't know where they're at because they're usually on the shelf in the dining room. They weren't there. So Dad's looking around in the living room. I turned the light on in the kitchen, so it's casting light off into the dining room area, right? No other light really on. And then I'm in my back bedroom. And I'm looking, and I can't find these stupid diapers, save my life. And I hear my dad say, David? David. And then he takes off, I hear footsteps running through the house. I'm like, what in the world is going on? So I come running up from the back bedroom, and my dad's standing in the spot between the dining room and the kitchen. And he's just looking around confused. And I'm like, Dad, what are you doing? And he said, where were you? And I said, I was in the back bedroom. So he swears that when he was in the living room, he looked and there was a figure standing like right here, casting a shadow off into the dining room area. And, he turned and he looked and he got kind of quiet and it started taking steps forward. And when it got to the point, like right by the refrigerator where, like, one more step, it would have come out in the open.
Yeah.
He said my name and it stood up straight and then it just kind of shrank away and went away. The only window in that room
Yeah.
was one of those old timey little small crank handle windows over the kitchen sink.
Yeah.
There's not anywhere for anybody to go. What was that? Freaked my dad out. He went outside and got in a truck. And my dad's not a guy that's really scared of a whole lot of stuff.
Right.
So that after that experience and some of the things that I've seen happen, I've had a few other. Well, we'll have another podcast maybe sometime together where I can tell you about all my creepy ghost stories and stuff that I've seen happen.
So do you think that was demonic?
Yes,
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
It was not a good force following me around. It would give you a sense of terror and dread when you felt its presence. Wasn't a good feeling when it was around. All that stuff seemed to kind of melt away once I got myself back in church and I started, really praying about protecting my home and my family. That stuff went away. But I firmly believe that you can attach yourself to things like that and carry it around and not even mean to and affect people around you. So if you like to mess with that stuff, it's fun and it can be cool to go do and it's exciting, but I highly suggest that you be careful with your spirituality when you mess with that because I feel like I almost learned that the hard way.
Okay, I got two questions about it because the ghost thing's always been very interesting to me. The two questions. Well, I guess it's technically three. First question: what is the exact? What purpose is the demon or demonic thing doing to you? Just killing you? Like 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 if a demonic person takes over you, does that mean for a fact that you doubt God or something, or can they still attach to somebody that has full faith in God? Or has there have to be a sliver to get in there? Because if so, if in all the at least I'm going off of horror movies because I've never seen anything. I've never seen anything. But if a demonic thing possesses you or something, and then you die, are you going to heaven? Or are you going to hell after you wake up from being asleep?
Well, I'm not saying that that's how it happens. I just, in my mind, I think that's how it happens.
So do you know what I'm asking?
Yeah,
Like what's the goal? Their goal.
torment.
Okay, to torment you.
Yeah,
But
because of original sin, life is going to suck sometimes, and their job is here to create doubt and increase torment in our lives. Basically, they're here to make something sucky even suckier for us if they can.
but do you think, in your just opinion, can you be possessed, if that's the word we're calling it, while you believe Christ is King?
Yes. Well,
So,
and it goes back to the ice question. A little bit of faith or a lot of faith. It doesn't take much faith to move a mountain, right? So if you have a little bit of faith, but uh, you still leave yourself open to that, it can still attach itself to you if you aren't careful.
I don't know. It's a hard time for me thinking for that for some reason. It's because we know God wins in the end.
Right.
So the only way that I could see something attaching to you, if there's a sliver of doubt, even though doesn't Jesus say that you just have to have a little faith in me?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know. I have a
You
hard.
don't have room to have a little faith and a little doubt.
Yeah, but I always told if you ride the fence, you're not going to heaven. Like if I think, hey, I believe in God, but also don't mind doing these bad things all the time.
If you don't care to do the bad things, are you really reborn in a child of God, though?
No, because I agree with you on that. I mean, I think
Okay.
you have to strive to be good, but
What if you make a mistake?
you ask for forgiveness because we all get forgiveness from.
What if you make a mistake you didn't realize you made?
You seek the
There's
wisdom of God to know that that's a mistake. I would think.
Okay, so there are conscious and unconscious sins.
Correct.
So what if you unconsciously allow something to attach itself to you and you don't even realize it?
But how can it do that? I
You've opened the door with sin. Any small sin creates a chasm between you and God that you have to reconnect. And so if that's the case and you unconsciously did something to create a rift, your your separation from God allows that entity to intercept that.
okay, so that begs a different question then. Do you think? Because I do think demons are real. I mean, Jesus literally cast out demons from people, so that's
Right.
facts to me that it's real. Do you think that they try to attach themselves to Christians already, or you think they try to attach themselves to just regular old dudes?
Go read
And
the screw tape letters and
and is it
come back to
and is it any easier for either one? would it be easier? It just in your opinion. Obviously, we don't have anything that can really just the Bible. But do you think it's easier for a demon to possess somebody that doesn't believe in God at all?
I think that they don't need to possess
They don't.
or attach themselves to someone who doesn't believe in God because they're not worth their
And I agree with you on that. I was just
the devil's job is to try to take us out of God's presence the way that he's been cast out and to cause torment to us. And so as Christians, we basically paint a target on our back for these things to come and look for us.
okay. So my last two questions then.
We went from 3 to 4 to 7.
Yeah, dude, I got a bunch. I've only asked two, I think. Maybe three, but these are my last two. Uh, at one time, Jesus gave the ability through God for his disciples to heal people. Didn't he do that for a little while and cast out demons?
Yeah.
It's not that he made them superheroes. It was just that God allowed.
Correct.
What?
He said correct.
Oh,
Correct.
I thought he said great. Uh, we know he's done that. So my last two questions: Can he still give people the ability to do that now? And if he can, should Christians seek out people that are possessed to help them?
Okay. So let's go back first to Jesus when he gave the disciples the ability to go and cast out demons. What happened within just a few days?
A ton of stuff. I mean, there was some people that.
They came back and said, "We've come across demons that we can't cast out in your name. What's going on?"
Oh, I did not know this.
And he called them fools and lazy and went and cast out the demon. And they said, "How'd you do that?" And he said, "By prayer and fasting. Only are you able to deal with some of these demons." So they're
It's
so
never mind. I'm going to let you go, or I'll ask another question. Go ahead.
so their faith while there wasn't strong enough to cast out that demons. There is a hierarchy of attachment and a hierarchy of levels of demons. Just the same way as there's a hierarchy of angels. All angels or all demons are just fallen angels. There's a hierarchy of angels. They all have specific tasks and jobs that they carry out. Same thing with demons. And so
I'm
as
going to write all the questions down for next podcast. You keep going. We're about at 2 hours.
so when that's all said and done, uh yes, I believe that people or humans or however you want to say it have the ability to cast out demons. It's been proven before, and it is something that God has given us the ability to do. Now, saying that Christians should seek those out to do those things, to me, is a false claim. And I will say that because there are many fruits of the Spirit that are laid out, many gifts. And it tells us to search for these gifts and to ask for these gifts to be given to us. But not everybody will receive the same gifts. You know, some people will receive the gift of speaking in tongues, and some people will get the gift of wisdom, and some people will get the gift of teaching, and some discernment, and so on and so on. So, you know, some get the gift of preaching, which is different than teaching. Preaching is leading, teaching is teaching. And I think that's where a lot of people get that wrong on what a preacher actually does. A preacher is not necessarily there to teach you the Bible. He's there to lead you by example and by words and works in what it means to try to do your best. And when you have a problem, you have someone upright that you can go to and take that to. So I don't think that the roundabout claim that every Christian should go out and try to cast out demons, I don't think that's correct. Believe that there are people who are called with the gift of being able to do that. What gift you would call that within the spiritual gifts that are laid out, I'm not sure. Don't know. Never tried it myself. Never really come across one that I thought, hey, I should give this a try. Now, do I think that it's a big, huge ritual thing like the Catholics do whenever they do their exorcisms? No. But do I think that something like that is necessary? Yes. But I don't think it's something that us three should just decide by ourselves. We're gonna go be the demon kicker outers.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's not for us to decide.
Some more questions? Hey, you got anything else you want to say?
No, that's good.
All right. Well, David, thank you for coming on the podcast.
I appreciate it, guys. I had a good time.
We're definitely going to have you back because I'm writing down all kind of questions. And I'd like to get your opinions on them. But that is episode 8 of the Skeptics Podcast. Guys, go out there, have a blessed day, tell someone about God, and always keep your mind open to anything except God. Anybody else have anything else they want to say? Did I screw that up in the end? Oh, how did I screw it up?
Keep your mind open, except about God.
Well, no, you can keep your mind skeptic about everything except for God.
Oh, skeptic.
Oh, you said open. Though.
Or still, same thing. Just
Okay.
keep your mind open about everything except God.
No, always keep your mind open.
That's not the way that I was interpreting it. I don't need to keep my mind open about God. I already made my decision.
I know, but it didn't sound like you closed off.
Oh, no, that's all I'm saying. All right, guys, have a good one later.